computer. Okay, recording has begun, and I'm Taylor Sharpe, and welcome to the FileMaker Pro User Group Dallas chapter. Let me get this to focus on me. So let's see, how do I do that? Spotlight for everyone. Okay. Hopefully you see my mugshot now. So anyway, I'm Taylor Sharpe. Myself and Greg Price are the co-chapters of the FileMaker Pro Dallas chapter. We're glad to have all of you here. It's hard to believe it's already October. It seems like September was just a week ago, and all of a sudden we're back. So it's fun to see everybody for sure again, and to get another presentation in. So let's go over some of our announcements. Greg, do you have any announcements you want to give us first?
I do not.
Okay.
My hands are empty.
Hands are empty. Okay. Well, that's good. We will, as far as I can see, the biggest announcement that's happening that if you wanted to attend, you can't, you're too late to do it now, is next week is Pause on Air. It's kind of the unconference, the unofficial Claris conference for FileMaker, done kind of like user group style. So it's not endorsed by FileMaker or Claris, but actually will be a few people from Claris there. So anyway, it'll be a fun week next week, and I'll give a little report next month on what all we learn and the challenges there. I think there are about 100 people going to Northeast Georgia. So you know, kind of up in the rural area there, I guess, think kind of like Deliverance or something, but anyway. But if we don't come back, look for us on the river. But so anyway, I do know that Claris has had some engaged in SharePoint meetings going lately. So there's some things going if you're an FBA partner, or I guess, what do we call Claris partners now?
Yeah.
Claris partner. Okay. Something like that. I guess we're supposed to update our logos. I think they supposedly sent out something that I have ignored this last month that I need to update on the web page. We've got new logos and things like that if you're a FileMaker partner. And
I think there was a partner session earlier this week, but
yes.
none of the people in my group were able to attend this week. So it's kind of a mystery to us as well.
Yes, I missed that. The one before Dennis was on it though. So Dennis was helping out with the marketing. So
nice one, Dennis.
Okay, today we're going to talk about mapping.
Can I say something about that, Mr. Sharpe?
Sure, step in, Dennis.
Yeah, they did follow up with me. I have to give them credit for that. Andy set up a phone call that was attended by Janine, and we talked for over an hour, and we had a very frank discussion. Once we got over talking about you, of course.
Whew. Ouch.
That's all I have to say.
The troublemaker, I'm sure. Okay, well, good that they listen to you. They listen to you better than they do me. So I'm always impressed that you can get their ear. So for whatever that is worth. So thank you, Dennis. So we'll remove the spotlight and we will turn around and get back into our session today. So let me see if I can start the screen share. Screen sharing coming now. Okay. Today we are going to not be talking about SendGrid bounces. That was what we were talking about earlier. We are going to be talking about kind of simple, quick and dirty mapping. A lot of us have clients that have a lot of data that is often already geocoded, and kind of a common request is, you know, let's make a map of this. And there are a number of ways of making maps that are out there. There are a number of APIs out there. Google is probably one of the best known, but there are a whole lot of other ones out there too, and there's some reasons for looking at them. But since I got started at Google a long time ago, the example I have is the Google API. And Google has a whole bunch of APIs that revolve around mapping. So they've got API pickers for various things. You need mapping for the SDK for Android, all the way down to reverse, taking addresses and converting them to geocode, lat longs to, heat maps, KML layers that you can merge with like OpenCity data, and you got map SDKs. There's all kinds. This thing has gone crazy just as you scroll through. Every one of those is a fully developed API in and of itself. And we're going to just look at one of them and only just a basic set of it. But the goal here is just to say, hey, can I, at the end of this presentation, be able to, have a FileMaker database and make an easy map from it that will map a bunch of locations on it and, cruise along. So obviously you can get a whole lot more involved, particularly if you know JavaScript, which seems to be kind of where a lot of things are going in the future. But yes, there's a whole lot more than what we're going to do today. But I'm just going to try to give a little practical application today. So if you're going to use Google, of course, I've showed you all their APIs that they have right there. Just hit the wrong thing. That keeps popping up. Just a second. You've got your microphone on. I think we're hearing someone, so you might want to mute. Okay. Back to where we were at. So we're trying to use one particular mapping function to solve some API problems. We're using Google to do it. If you're going to use Google, Google requires you to have an API key. That's your permission to use their API. That means they're tracking what you're doing. They probably are selling it for marketing purposes or whatever evil things you can contemplate. But, it is, you're selling your soul. But they also give you a good mapping solution in return. So I can't speak for what they actually do with any of your data or don't do, but just be aware of that. But that means you have to get an API key from them. That means you have to go into their, to get an API key, you have to come over here. Here's a link from the solution we have that shows you how to get a key. So, and then you'll log into their console. You'll put your information, including a credit card in, because if you go over a certain volume of requests, they will actually bill you for it. So of course, the next question is, how much are they going to bill me for this? How much is this going to cost? Well, I can tell you for most of the small FileMaker projects I've ever done on, nobody's ever been billed anything because nobody's hit those minimum usages. However, you can in a project that does, and if so, here is what they charge. Right now, the first 100,000 hits to the map API are free. 100,000 to $500,000 cost you what? Well, 0.2 of a cent. So yeah, so 0.2 cents for each one. So it's not much. And then if you go over $500,000, it's even less than that. So anyway, there is a cost if you wanted to say, I've got several million of these things to do. Yes, you're going to end up getting your credit card hit. So be wary about putting your credit card out there. But they send me the most annoying thing is I get a PDF invoice every month that says $0 on it. So other than I get the spam email, that's probably the most annoyance I've gotten over it because I've never hit the 100,000 limit on it. So, but there are other services like OpenStreets, I think, that don't ever charge. And there are a number of other ones out there. OpenStreets is more of a open source one. So if you're like an open source person, you might want to look them up, but it does similar things once you get on there. Now, what you're looking at right here that I've been doing these little clicks off of here is a FileMaker template I have. So that FileMaker template is just something I've got. Well, I'll show you where I've got it. If you want what I have on this template, it's out on my server, tms.us. Click on Contact Us. And then we have a whole bunch of templates over here. I've done some of these templates in the past. This is the particular template we're working on right here. You just hit download and you'll get that template that we're working from right now. And of course, as all of these templates go, I invariably have little updates here as we figure out little bugs or tweaks or whatever. So, but I'm, it's what's there is free as is. If it works for you, great. If not, if you need more than that, obviously, you can get a FileMaker developer to help you do that. Most all of us know how to do that. That's why we are here. So if we look back in the template that we opened up here, this is the intro page, and we're going to move over into looking at some data. So this is an example of a common thing that you might have in FileMaker. You've got some table that has latitude, longitude, you've got some text, and you're wanting to make a map of it. So a couple of things that you're going to need to do this. Obviously, you're going to need a table with latitude and longitude. You're going to need some text that's going to, that's going to be associated with whatever, with each of the icons. And then you will also notice on this, you have to have an icon that's based on a URL that sits out either locally or out on the web somewhere that you can reference, because whatever you are displaying, that icon will show up. All of these you can see are the same icon that just happens to be on my server. So it's just one of the logos of my company, but you could put anything you want out there. And what's interesting is, since there's a different potential icon for every record, we could put a different icon for each different thing. And that can be real nice for when you're mapping things, because sometimes you want to map all of certain, like, for example, I don't know, you're mapping salesmen and you want them all together, but each salesman you want to have a particular color of or something. You can make their dot be a green whatever, so, or a red one or whatever. So, but that's just a matter of making your icons. But you have to actually put it out on the web somewhere that a URL can hit it. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If you try to do a map without the icons, you get a map, and when there's no icon for the map, you just get a map and you don't see anything. And I've had more people say, it didn't work. It's like, well, it did work, but they're just, your icons were so small that you can't see them. So,
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
If the image file was, let's say, a photograph of you and Greg and Steve in this example,
Mm-hmm.
are you saying that then your picture would appear on the map instead of, some colored dot?
Yes, and in fact, there is no default colored dot. If you don't put an icon, you don't get a dot. You don't get anything. No, you don't get the little drop. You don't get anything. So if you want the little drop, make that your dot and reference wherever that little dot is, and that's where it is. But yes, you can put pictures there. Now be aware, also, these are going to be the size of whatever you make, how many pixels. So if you put a picture in there that's 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels and you put it on your map, it's going to just cover up your map and you won't see the map. So
the example I'm thinking of is when somebody has a picture of the front of their building, and the map gives you a street view of themselves rather than just their name. If it was sized appropriately, then
you actually can put that in the like in a balloon thing too. Those are options that you have on this, where when you click on it, it comes up and you can put whatever text and images and stuff in there that you want.
Yes, we're gonna cover that. That's one of the positive things. Thank you, Michael Wallace. You're ahead of the game. So as you can see, I've got an example here. And of course, we've got an API key in, and the information you're going to need. This is the minimum information you're going to need up above as far as the data. You need a Google API key, and you're going to need a map zoom level. And then we're going to create a map, and then we're going to talk about some of these things that we've just been talking about. So I'm going to hit create map, and we've got a map, and I'll zoom back out. You can see all of these. The icons were just my little company logo. But if you click on them, you can see that it's got the text of whatever, was in it. So you obviously can provide data in there. So it's useful if you want to click on something. Maybe it's got the address or their phone number or other things. But you can also put in links to different things. And of course, if you do a Google link, here I click Google. Hey, we're in Google. There's Google search. Okay, whoop-de-doo. Okay, so we come back and do this again, and And not only can you have HTTPS or HTTP references, you can also do FMP calls too, which is the FileMaker Pro URL. So for example, if I want to say I'm in this FileMaker and I want to run this FileMaker script, I've got a script that says say hello. I click on this and I just ran a script in FileMaker from the map that says hello, you know, so you can actually call a script in FileMaker and run it from the map. So that's just, you know, JavaScript making a FMP call to, you know, and FileMaker is the listener for FMP calls and it runs it for you. So yeah, whoop-de-doo. And let me make the map a little bigger. Okay.
Taylor, I have a question. So those,
Taylor, that actually has come in useful for me multiple times for taking you to specific records in the database off the map.
Yes, yes, exactly. Heather's got a question here or
so,
comment.
I noticed you actually clicked on those, with your map pin icons, if you will. Do you have a hover option?
No,
Okay.
but this
We
is
didn't hear the question. We didn't hear
JavaScript,
the
so
question.
you can do that. It's just beyond the JavaScript I have in there.
Okay.
So all of these things you can do a whole lot more than, so as I said, this is quick and dirty intro into the API. There's a lot more you can do.
I didn't hear the question.
The question was, can we do hovers? So instead of having to click on it, you just mouse over it and you get a hover that pops up over, which is a nice feature. And no, this particular set of JavaScript that I have in here doesn't do the hover, but you know, it's just JavaScript. So if you know JavaScript, you can make the hover work. I just was, this is quick and dirty. It's, you click on it, it pops, does a little pop over, and that's all it does right now. But yes, you can get fancier in all kinds of ways with, like Heather is mentioning. So she's thinking outside the box. We're going to do that next week, aren't we? Okay, so we've seen how this the example here. So let's talk about how this works. So first of all, in doing this, my goal was to make something that's easy for a lot of people to use. And so what I've done is I've created a custom function. And I know Dennis is about to roll over because he knows I hate custom functions. Anyway, I've created a custom function that basically does this for you. So basically, we're going to go look at scripting. So I'm assuming all of you are developers out there and you're not afraid of scripts. So we're diving into scripts. So basically what we need to do this, I've created a custom function that is going to be right here. Where's it at? So this is the custom function is called TMS Google Map. And then what you're going to do is you're going to feed it the API. You're going to feed it the width and height of your map, the zoom level you want, and then the type. I've made it so that you can either feed it JSON or a comma delimited array or a tab delimited array. And then you got to actually feed it the array. So to be able to do this, you're going to have to be able to make an array that's either do SQL or looping through records and build an array. And that array can be, you know, I usually will do tab delimited, or you can build a JSON will work. And if you put these together, this custom function will then generate that HTML, the JavaScript, and all you have to do past this point, it's being saved into, hopefully you can see $HTML is a global variable. And then when we're looking back at the map over here, this is just a WebViewer that has $, whatever the variable's name is, so that it'll display. So that custom function is creating the $HTML for you. So to see what it does, just to see what it generates, and of course, obviously, if you know HTML and JavaScript, you can do a lot more with it. I know enough to be dangerous about it, but I am not a web developer. But basically what it does is it builds, it uses the API to, and basically we've got a header that it builds that's got your width and height of things. And then you will notice we've got the array. This is the array that builds that map and talks, and it's done in the format that the API is. It kind of looks like quasi JSON, but they use single quotes instead of double quotes, but be that whatever it is, that's how the array is built in there. And then we have the JavaScript call down here that, among other things, centers your map, figures out your zoom level, and calls the JavaScript from Google to generate the map. So that all, basically, when you run the custom function, it puts all that together for you real quick, so that all you have to then do is go to the map or go to a web viewer, you know, click on your web viewer, put your web viewer down here, and put, you know, whatever your global variable is going to be in here. I put $HTML, and now you have a map. So that's kind of the quick and dirty how to create it. So before next, I'm going to get into, you know, looking at that custom function, which is kind of where the dirtier part of it is, or the more in depth. But before that, I want to open up. Are there any questions about just quick and dirty making a map from an array of fields that we have in FileMaker? For example, I guess I should show you making an array. We have arrays up here. I have several different arrays for creating the array. For example, one is if you wanted to create JSON using raw data. This is just if you were in FileMaker and you wanted to actually, as a function, use the JSON set element, create the fields that we need. And in this case, you will see that you need the name of text, latitude, longitude, and icon URL. And that's the JSON you'd create manually. Or you can do this is a combination of SQL and converting that SQL to JSON. So you can do that, or you can just, if you just want to have a SQL array, this is where I've just created a SQL array, and the SQL array has the latitude, the longitude, the popover text, and the icon URL, and they're just tab delimited in a SQL array that gets returned. So however you want to create this array, you can even, here's the example of just going to records and looping through and creating an array. This is where it's creating the JSON for each record. Go to the next record and keep appending that array. And that way you can, if you don't want to do SQL, this is how you, this section right here is how you do it without SQL. So that's just looping through and getting each one. So however you want to build the array, you can build the array. It just has to have latitude, longitude, the text for the popover, and the icon URL, and then you are good to go to create using that custom function. So at this point, any questions before we look at the custom function?
I have a question about the lat and long.
Question about lat and long from Heather. Speak up so everybody can hear you here.
So, did you use an API or a service to get those coordinates?
No, I did not, but there is a geocoding API from Google that will do it for you, that your same API key will work for, but that's kind of a different subject.
Right.
But yes, this same API will do that. It's another API within.
We've built geocoding into systems for that purpose, for, you know, adding new addresses that, you don't know that nobody's going to go out and look for it.
And they mostly work, but not always, but you know, yes, we've all been there. And of course, and they, you know, and they got challenges like when you put PO boxes in there, you know, what address, you know, what geocode are you going to do for that? Or do you just default to the zip code center point or whatever? I mean, there's all kinds of games you play.
They were all physical locations. There were no PO boxes. They were for site, for say like construction sites. So they were physical locations. So that did go over to
Yeah. Way back in my more youthful days, I used to work for the federal government, and one of the things they required was we do inspections, and they said you have to put down an address and put it in this national database for where you go to, because everything has an address and a zip code, and you can't go past that point in the database to record an inspection if you don't put that in there. And I had to tell them, not every place has an address and not every place has a zip code. And they're like, no, every place has an address. And I said, or they said, well, you can do the narrative address. I said, yeah, I can do, you know, go past the 4th barn on the left and look for the, you know, oak tree or whatever. But there are places in the United States that don't have a zip code. And they informed me that there are no places in the United States that don't have zip code. Then I reminded them I do inspections out in the Gulf of Mexico, where I fly out on a helicopter, land on one of these little pads that does, you know, oil and gas, you know, drilling and pumping, and those don't have zip codes, and the post office does not deliver to them. And technically they're not even in the United States. They're outside of the 25-mile territorial area. So it was funny to argue with the headquarters people to explain, not every place has an address and not every place has a zip code. So that's when you find that out, when you're doing things like that, and you get a little chuckle about it. But
if you go online and you go to zip code 07837,
yes,
it appears as Glasser, New Jersey, when in fact it is a room inside a general store that used to be owned by Bill Glasser. It's the smallest post office in the United States. I was, I used to be.
Have you been there?
Yeah, and Charles Carroll came out and did an interview of the postmaster and me for his series.
Smallest post office in America. Well, it has to be one, but yes. It's always interesting when you're geolocating things, but back to the mapping here, our assumption is that you have a latitude and longitude. And one of the things to be careful about is when you're feeding this array is that you have a latitude and longitude, because if you don't put one in, it's going to put you down at the equator or something like that. So you do want to make sure your data has a latitude, a longitude, and an icon, or you won't see anything on this map. So just keep that in mind. So we did talk about you can put links in here. So this is the example of, I hope you guys can all see that. Does this zoom in for you guys? Okay, hope it does. There was the Google link. So it's just Ahref, you know, HTML link to Google. And then of course, here's the FMP URL for calling this same database on the same machine. If you just put $ in, that means look at the same machine instead of putting an IP or a URL in. And then it calls this same database. And then it says run a script. And the script is called navigations. And then the parameter is this, you know, say navigation, say hello. And it runs that script. So anyway, there's kind of the FMP URL, which of course is a whole nother subject on it. But yes, you can, and not only can you put like links in there and text, you can also put pictures in there. I think Mike Wallace was talking about it. You can put an image source reference in there. So if you're popover, you want to have pictures in there, you could have a picture that's, you know, of the place or the person or whatever. So all kinds of things that can be done in that popover, because it really is just HTML. Whatever you can do in HTML and CSS, you can do in that popover. Okay, so with that aside done, let's go look at the custom function. So here's the custom function that makes all of this. Well, I guess I'll show you first, if you're making a script step, how it comes up. Well, I guess we just do it in the data viewer. We're in the data viewer. Okay, so I'll try to zoom in so you guys can see, but here is the function. And as you can see, it has the variables. And so you have to put an API key in. You have to put a width in pixels, because these maps are not dynamic HPL. They're actually an image. And then you have to have the height in pixels. And then I don't know why Google has a zoom of 1 to 18. 18 seems a pretty random number, but yes, zooming in and out is by putting whatever number in. It's the same thing as hitting the little thing down at the bottom to zoom in and out on the map. But yes, you can specify, or you have to specify a zoom level. Then you have to also specify the type. Is it tab, comma, or JSON? So you just put one of them in here. Like say if I'm doing JSON, I would put JSON in like that. So, or I would put in, you know, tab or comma. And that lets it know what type of array it is. And then of course you have to feed the array, whatever your array is called, you know, dollar array or whatever you created in a previous step that you generated that array. I guess you could actually do the SQL right in here, but that would make it look ugly. I was trying to make this as simple looking for someone who doesn't want to see the complexities of things that they can do and generate the HTML below. So that.
I have a comment. I just want to say I really like how you defined your custom function with real descriptive, like sentences with all the options. That I've always used just a single word for each one, and I like that.
I've used other people's custom functions before, and I couldn't figure out some of their variables sometimes, and that's why. What does that mean?
I have one script in particular that I use a lot where I actually named the script so that it shows the results that are possible. You know, that whatever you put in as your parameter, you know, 1 will do this, 0 will do that, null will do this other thing. And that way you never have to remember. And that's what that reminds me of. I really like that.
It gets as simple as, you know, we should also be commenting in our scripts and things like that, because maybe someone might come behind us and have to figure it out.
Never. That never happens.
Okay, so let's go look at the actual custom function. So for those of you who haven't done custom functions, custom functions have their own little quirky way they work in the past that I don't use. I just use a regular calculation, and I don't use their funky little looping before because I didn't like it. I just use whiles in it, and they work wonderful because I like the way while works a lot better. So any looping you will see in my custom functions use the while instead of that former process that we had. I don't know what you would call it. Heather, what would you call it? Recursive. Yeah, there was recursive custom functions. Well, I use whiles in here. So, but as you can see, when you look in here, we have our variables up front. And I also do some assumptions if you don't put something in that it fills in some default values. And then I give, here's some examples of if you wanted a tab delimited array, there's an example one, and here's an example of one built from JSON. So these are just commented out, but they're in the custom function in case someone wants to see what it'd be like if you were wanting to build that in the script or something. And then we get down into the actual custom function. And basically, we have an array that comes as a normal array from, you know, FileMaker that we built with like comma delimited, tab delimited, or JSON. And now we have to make it into, it's almost JSON, but it's not quite. They're like using single quotes instead of double quotes. And so you have to convert it into this other array format that the API uses. So all you can say is APIs are unique. You have to, whatever their format is, if they happen to use raw JSON, great. If not, we have to convert them. So what I've done here is up here is if the raw data source, the array that we brought in was called tab or comma, it builds the array here that the API wants to look for. And if the type is JSON, it has to pull the records a little bit differently to build the same rows the way they're expected to be seen in the array inside the HTML for the JavaScript. So there's where those are built. The other thing that happens is, you know what, if you do a map and you don't put some center location on it, you always end up over at 0 lat 0 long, which is just somewhere just to the west of Africa in the Pacific Ocean. So you have to give it a center or you get kind of hosed. So basically what I did was I did two calculations that basically loops through the arrays and figures out, it takes all the latitudes and then averages them, and it takes all the longitudes and averages them, and that way we have a new center location so that when it builds the map, it's going to give the geocoded center based on the latitude and longitude you do. So this whole section right here was just about creating a center location for the map to be based on. And then we come down into the header. This is where we're building the HTML. So this is just the standard header that comes in that you have to build on the HTML. Then we also have a footer that has, well, the header calls the JavaScript. The JavaScript that talks to the API is down here in the footer. So we've got a header and a footer. And then really the body is just that array that we built up above. So basically in building the HTML, I'm building the header, then I put the array, which is going to be the dynamic part based on the data we have, and then give the footer, and we put those three things together and we end up with supposedly HTML code that is ready to go in a web viewer. I will note that this isn't exactly pure HTML, because if you've worked with FileMaker, you'll know for the web viewer, you have to put this little section in up at the bump to tell the web viewer that we're feeding it text data in the HTML format, has to precede the HTML code. If you were to take this HTML code and want to put it out on a regular web page outside of FileMaker, you would just take out that first line and just start off with the second line, just get rid of that data text HTML thingy, and then you could paste that map somewhere else in case you want to use it elsewhere. Okay, so that is the custom function that generates it, and then of course in this case here, when it generates it, we end up with what we already looked at before. Here's our HTML, and we'll take one last close look at the array. This is the array that we built that looks an awful lot like JSON in that it starts off with brackets. I would probably have expected a curly bracket here in JSON, and we would have double quotes here. And but the comma separator and everything else about it pretty much works the same way it does. One thing that's nice about having single quotes is their break around here is it makes it easy for putting double quotes in for things when you're doing reference links without having to do escape characters. Maybe that's why they did that, or someone's smarter than I said. No. Other thing about URLs, you will also need to use URL safe coding. So you'll need to use the get as URL encoding to convert, spaces and ampersands and everything else into whatever you want for them for what you're going to feed in the script parameter if you want to feed that as part of a link to run a script. But other than that, the hard part's actually done at the API. Google has done that. It's actually fairly amazingly small amount of code that we have to put in here to make this work. And just FYI, I don't know what the limit on this is, but I currently have a customer that puts about 10,000 icons on their map locations on it, and it loads fast. I'm talking the whole thing loads in about 4 to 5 seconds with 10,000 locations on it. It's hard to believe that it does it. So I don't know, there's probably some maximum amount that you can do on it, but that's pretty amazing when you consider it. And actually that only counts as one call. That's not 10,000 calls. That's one call that had 10,000 dots on it. So hence, if your dots get too big and you have 10,000 on them, your dots end up covering the whole page and you can't see anything. So you have to be careful about that too. But anyway, that's kind of a quick and dirty custom function I've built for if someone wants to borrow it to make obviously a map for their customer or their in-house solution, and hopefully kind of make it a little easy on that. I will mention I started this out. A friend of mine that's a JavaScript guru, Chris Kenyon with My Support Pad, is the JavaScript guy who helped finish this off to make sure it worked the way it was. I had it working, but it didn't load every time, and he was able to figure out what was wrong in my JavaScript to make that happen. So thank you, Chris Kenyon. I know he's not online here, but we appreciate that. He's a very knowledgeable. He's one of these web services developers that knows FileMaker, but he's not a FileMaker developer. He's not interested in being a FileMaker developer, but he knows FileMaker well for interacting with from web services to their FileMaker Data API, PHP, ODBC, JDBC, but of course nowadays it's mostly the Data API. Okay, questions from the audience? Anybody got any comments, suggestions?
I just have one quick question, which is, this is the actual file that we, yeah.
That's the actual file you can download.
Okay.
So no tricks, full admin access. You can do anything you want with it. Fully dangerous.
So go back to your data tab.
Yep.
So this, where did it go? The text. Okay, icon popover text. This is where your variables were coming, like an FMP URL. You're literally dropping it as text. And so in a more advanced situation, you could have that be a variable that would then throw.
It can be a whole web page. It can
The
be
entire web. Yeah. But as far as the API, this API is concerned, or the API to which you're connecting, that is just the icon popover text.
Mhm.
Got it. Okay. All right.
So all kinds of creative things that you can do with that. So, but the most common one that, I think Greg was mentioning is, here's the example where you call the file that you're in and tell it to run a particular script. And so that way, if someone clicks on a particular thing, it can take it to that particular customer record in the FileMaker layout or whatever you want. So that's a common thing of it. So, okay. Any other questions? Have I put everybody to sleep? I hope not. Okay.
Does the download file include sample data and your API key?
It does not include my API key, but the sample data is in there. Everything's in there but my API key. So,
just curious.
So
Inquiring minds want to
no,
know.
yes. I have run into times where I see people accidentally leave their API key in that they put something on the web. It's like, nope, get that off there. You might regret that. So.
This is Gerard. I have a question for the group. And last month I gave a presentation on the map, on the charts and stuff. And I was doing some investigation this morning on this, and then I have done things in the past with Google Maps where you click something and then you click the URL to go someplace else. Well, what I'm kind of interested in instead of clicking to get the popover and then clicking the URL, what would be interesting is to see how you can click something to immediately run a FileMaker script using the JavaScript, using the FileMaker script call within the Java, and getting information that you have in there so that you can go ahead and load up a window directly in FileMaker so you don't have to do the 2 clicks. And the challenge that I'm seeing here is, how do I get my UUID in there so that I can pull it back out so I can use it to go ahead and find that particular record based on information in there. And that's what I was kind of looking, I was doing some review on that this morning because I'm considering, I would like to make our maps in our solution do that immediately instead of having to do 2 clicks and stuff like that.
Okay,
And,
well, what you can do is you can put it in the icon popover, but what you want to do is use the HTML comment out so that people don't see the UUID, because it,
well, no, I understand that, but I would much rather, like we can do with other graphic visual data visualization tools, is work directly from the map, click it, and immediately get to a web viewer, the layout in FileMaker.
Well, and that's running the script right here. You just click on this and it runs that.
Yeah,
script.
but you have to do 2 clicks in order to do it.
So you're talking click once, click twice.
You have to click once to get the pop-up, and then you click again in order to initiate the URL.
Well, you can do Heather's suggestion and have it do a hover. When you have a hover, it pops over, and then of course you say moving your mouse kind of counts as a click. But
well, I'm just saying is that for data visualization and to interact immediately with the data in FileMaker would be good. I'm trying to figure out how to figure out what I need to do there in order to make that happen.
I bet you can go to this API. There are other APIs out there that when you click on it, it just takes you somewhere instead of doing the popover. So, you know, that's something that's just solved in JavaScript.
Yes, but the challenge there is you're not working in, how do you get that? How do you get that information in
You
there?
have to have, the API has to support it.
No, hold on. You have to have in that, on that web viewer, you're going to have information about what you're going to do. Okay,
Right.
such as a UUI, an ID of some sort, so that you can go ahead and
Okay.
transition.
That's exactly what we see right in here.
I'm not
in
seeing
the
your
array.
screen.
So you put that in the array that's in here, all of that information.
I'm not seeing your screen, Taylor.
Oh, let's see. Okay.
Turned off the sharing.
I can see it. Why can't you? Okay, just a second.
You're looking at it. I'm not.
Okay. That's all this data right in here that I'm feeding in.
I understand that, but how do you, can I put in there, can I put other custom information in there?
Yes, that's why I'm saying this whole text section right in here, this first thing,
Okay,
you can put a whole web page in there. You can put comments in there. You can put CSS in there. You can put.
Okay, so, but now, how do I, you know, instead of doing, but you see, that is not a JSON. When you click on that, and how do you, the challenge is how do I parse that out? Not do a.
Okay, you can, what goes in there can be either raw text or HTML. In HTML, you can do comments. Inside the comments, you can put JSON, XML, or whatever you want in those comments, and you can use FileMaker to parse out the, you know, that HTML. That's
right, but if you put that in there, it's going to show.
No, not it's HTML, and if you put it as an HTML comment, it will not display.
Okay, I'll have to look into that and see once. You know, I'm just trying to figure out how do I'm just trying to see what might be available. I'm just trying to understand what some options might be.
Certainly, because basically you want to have that record show all the things that you need, you know, to display. But right, yes, you would just include that in the HTML, and I would just comment it out, and that way you can put the.
But I still, but still, I need to not do the popover.
Okay. Well,
okay, I don't want to do
that. Right. This API comes with a popover. There are other APIs, and Google may have another API that doesn't have the popover.
Okay.
I'm just saying this is the one that's have there, and you know, you can go to OpenStreet, see if they've got one without the popover. It certainly beats you know, rewriting all the code, you know.
Yeah, I understand. And I was looking at my code this morning to figure out what I possibly could do, because my objective is, instead of clicking twice to get to that, I want to be able to click once and immediately do an action within FileMaker.
You know what? I just thought HTML can be a redirect file. You could just make HTML redirect to whatever you want. Just make an HTML redirect. So when the popover opens, it'll redirect to.
Well, I was
Jared?
Gerard.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry. That's okay. I'm just.
My brain is not functioning. So what you're asking for is the icon is on the map, and when you click it, that is now a button.
Yes.
That instead of the action being a popover, it becomes an action that you click on it, and immediately you get some package of information that you want to call the FileMaker script with. You call the FileMaker script with that data.
Make a redirect, HTML redirect.
Actually, you don't even have to do that. There's a function that gets called whenever you click on that before it opens. If you look at the API, you can assign a FileMaker script, you know, with the data URL or whatever, to that Java, to that call, and it will open.
Okay, because
I bet that it's right here in this code right here.
No, that's when you're loading the event. You're clicking down here. Your listener is
Oh,
right
here's
here.
our listener. Okay.
Here's your listener, okay? But when you, the challenge is this function here opens up a popover. Because I'm not expecting anybody to have an answer. I'm just trying to say what my objective is.
Well, you're asking for a different behavior than this default API is. So all I
Yes,
can
I was
say
just wondering I was just wondering if anybody had any suggestions and stuff like that that I hadn't gone through yet. Okay, that's all. I'm just making that's all I need to know. I'll continue doing my investigation and seeing if I can figure that out, because that's my objective.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that, there's a way it can be done. I don't happen to know.
I know there is. It's just a matter of seeing what I can put together there.
Certainly,
Thank you.
certainly. Okay, Gerard. Sorry, I didn't have a better answer for you.
No, but it might make me think a little bit more.
How much do you have to zoom out to get Steve on the map?
Oh, he's just, Steve on the map is just south of the Trinity.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, so it wasn't actual, those aren't actual addresses.
okay, okay.
Oh, yeah. These are not real. These are made up
Okay,
lat
okay,
logs.
got it,
They
got
don't go anywhere. It's not.
Steve-
I didn't give Steve's home address away.
Okay, okay.
Let's see. Yes, Steve is camping out down at the Trinity River bottoms. There we go.
All right.
Did you know he's with one of these homeless camp down in the
Yeah,
Trinity River? Oh, moving up in the world. Okay. Well, I think, are there any other comments? If not, I think we're going to call the meeting to a close here. I want to thank everybody for being here and sponsorship. We got a little bit of a small group today. There are 5 of us up here in person. Anybody's welcome to join us in person. If you do, we encourage you to have the vaccine shot, or you can do virtually. So we have a number of virtual people attending. That's great. So we probably need to do a little more PR work to get the word out that we're kind of gearing back up for 2022. But